All right, it is 5:15, so we'll go ahead and get started. Our Thursday, February 18th, 2021 work session for the Marquette City Commission is now called to order at 5:15 p.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. And City Clerk, could we have roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor. As always, please state your physical location, county and city. Commissioner Bonzal.
Here in the city of Marquette, County of Marquette.
Commissioner Davis.
Here, City of Marquette, County of Marquette.
Commissioner Hanley.
Here, City of Marquette, County of Marquette.
Commissioner Mayer.
Here, unable to provide location because of military service.
Commissioner Stonehouse.
Here, City of Marquette, County of Marquette.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
Present, City of Marquette, County of Marquette.
And Mayor Smith.
Here, City of Marquette, County of Marquette. And brings us to announcements. I don't have any announcements this evening. Now we have public comment. I understand we have one written comment, and then we'll see if we've got anyone in the audience. Go ahead, City Clerk. Thank you.
One written comment from Margaret Brum, 404 East Magnetic Street, Marquette, Michigan, concerning the potential building of 2 walkways with possible mooring stations for the visiting boaters in the Lower Harbor. I am happy that this subject has come up again, as the last I remember the potential building had been stalled by state agency rejection of the building plans for various reasons. I am hoping the 2 walkways will be built, as they will provide additional access to the lake year-round. As I have previously requested of the Commission, I am also hoping that there can be a viewing section on at least one of the walkways, so that people standing on the walkway can look down and see underneath the water, like in a glass-bottom boat. Not only would the viewing section be welcomed by those people who can no longer go out on the lake in a boat due to mobility challenges, but it would also provide an area suitable for underwater art displays, which would give the creative community an opportunity to showcase their talents in a different atmosphere. And that is all.
All right, thank you. Do we have anyone who's called in to comment?
One person might be.
Okay. We have one that might be. We're going to check. I have someone on the call on the username NREIS. I'm not sure. Are you here for public comment?
He is with
Are you here for public comment?
He's here with JF Brennan also.
Okay. Part of the contractor?
Yep.
One of the contractors? Okay. Thank you. All right. So we don't have any additional public comment. Public comment is now closed. We're moving on to our one agenda item here, our discussion on the Founders Landing Pier project. I just want to kind of set the stage that this is a work session. No votes or decisions will be made tonight. We will discuss the project at hand, learn some more about any changes and financials, and we will have John Swenson start us off. And I think after the presentation, what I'll do is we'll go through and have each commissioner have a chance to ask questions or make any comments, and then we can have some back and forth with the consultants if we need to at that point.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, John. Thank you.
Just to kind of tee this up, we're here tonight to discuss the project and some changes that have happened. George Meister is here with GEI. He's going to kind of run us through what those proposed changes are, and the hope is to get a little bit of feedback from the commission on those. Prior to going through those scenarios, he's going to go through some slides that are going to bring everybody up to speed. Not everybody was involved from the beginning with this. We have some new commissioners serving. We're going to bring everybody back up to speed and then discuss the options to change the project. Now, this project has been delayed in some fashion by permitting, and that permitting has also caused some design changes. Through that, it's become apparent that we need to go with another contractor for the construction. So after George goes through his presentation, I'll discuss that portion of it. That is JF Brennan. They are here tonight. They've been assisting with the design options that are going to be before you tonight. So they are here to help answer any questions as well. After that portion, we'll discuss the finances and kind of get into a little bit of where the dollars come from, how the budget works, and all that. Gary Simpson, I believe, is here as well to discuss that. So without further ado, I turn it over to George Meister. Oh, you might be on mute, George.
George, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. I couldn't find the button. It slipped, switched to the other screen.
And then I have to say that I was on mute, telling you that you were on mute, which delayed everything. So sorry, everyone.
Yeah. All right, you can hear me now? And you can see the screen here as well, the PowerPoint? Okay, great. So since we've got several new people here that may or may not know the history of this, thought I'd start with a brief background on it. It's been a project that's had a lot of work put into it between the commission, the staff, GEI, a lot of different groups that we've worked with in the community to get to where it's at today. And I'm not going to really get into too detail on everything, but just wanted to kind of give you a quick background on it. So again, George Meister with GEI. So let me see if I can get this thing to go to the next. There we go. So this is the area back in 1905 that looks a lot different now, but what you can see, and if you can see my mouse here, what you'll see is an old wooden ore dock here that's actually over the location where the fish dock is, I believe now, or the boat association dock, one of those two. This is the former spear dock. And as we refer to the north dock, it's actually this location, and this is Ripley Rock out here. The current ore dock that you see actually kind of runs in between these two, would be just on the far other side of this ship here. So it kind of runs right here. This dock here was an old Ellis&I ore dock, a timber dock that went out, I think it was about close to 2,000 feet, went way out there. That's all been removed. There's a little bit of, you can see the pilings out, about half of what used to be there. Those pilings are still, excuse me, here. Currently there's a walkway now that runs along the waterfront right here with the hotel and Marquette One Place sitting kind of down in this location. And this area is the park with the LSCP building sitting over here. So kind of a quick orientation to where we're at and what we're looking at. And this dock here and the remnants of, the remnants of this dock and the remnants of this dock, which are the piles, are the locations where we're looking at doing this future work. So a couple of years ago, GEI was hired to do an assessment of what was out there, what the shape and condition of the piles and different things on site were. We did a dive inspection. We did some surveying, bathymetric surveying, some soil borings out there, and got a pretty good picture of what was there. We did find that the wood piles were, in the most part, pretty good shape. They're pretty sound from being submerged in the fresh, cold water. But as we started looking through, we aren't reusing them, because as we started looking through the feasibility of doing so, we found it was a lot more expensive to try to reuse the existing wooden piles than to put new steel piles into the ground. So that's the direction we've gone with it at this point. it was all good information. The bathymetric and soil borne and such was all vital information, but unfortunately costs just didn't work out for using those piles. However, we're still keeping them in place, preserving them, or well, they're preserved on their own, keeping them in place and using them as kind of a design feature and a historical item for people to see. It's one of the things during the early parts of this project that we heard from the public quite a bit was that they in general, like seeing those piles out there, even if they're old, historic, and not really do anything. Just the piles themselves are a neat aspect, just kind of like the ore dock nearby. So we worked off that somewhat in our design as well. So after we got done with all our field work and everything, we ended up coming to this existing conditions drawing and information that we've got. So we've got a very detailed bathymetric survey. This outline right here is the outline of the wooden piles on that north dock. This is the large ore dock that stands there still. Marquette One Place, the Hamilton Inn, and this is where the Southern LS&I ore dock used to stand and is now a pile field here also. On this north dock, this area that you see right here is a timber crib that's filled with stone. This little guy right here also is, and there's 4 timber cribs down here also that are filled with stone that I think if I go back, that's what you see right here is a picture of one of those timber cribs that are underground. So on this is the north dock that you see here with the old Spear and Sons merchant building on it. Underneath that and underneath here where these trains are coming through is where that timber cribbing sits on that building. So it'd be under this area here where the trains were coming through. And then there's these right here were the other cribs, and then there's a smaller one kind of off the end of here. All right. So that's the existing conditions which we were working from, and over the course of this, these are some of the different groups and entities that we've had input from. We've held meetings with, gotten emails from, or one way or another talked to. So it's been fairly extensive. We put out an online community input survey that we got a good number of responses on that, trying to share what people were looking for. Numerous city commission meetings and work sessions over the past couple of years. Parks and Rec Department with John has been very involved. The engineering department's had some involvement. We've met with the Harbor Advisory Committee a number of times now, giving them some presentations. And we've talked to these other groups here as well. I won't continue to go through them, as well as a handful of people individually and a couple other groups that aren't actually on here also. The image you see there on the right was actually from the original rendering when we first got going on the project. And in that original rendering and original design, we had a large dock in the north dock location near the ore dock. Due to some different permitting things that came up, we've actually ended up having to change what that looks like a bit and swap it to the south side. So that's now closer to what the south one looks like, and the north dock is more of a small walkable pier now at this point. So some of the things we've looked at over the course of this project, the community input's been big. We've had a lot of that and really pulled that into what we can for design. Functionality, there's several things that were important to try to include here. Just off the top of my head, a few of them are accessibility, a kayak or canoe launch that's accessible, small craft boat mooring, the possibility for some larger craft boat mooring, the ability to get out on top of the water and get out past it has also been just one of the simpler and very important things, and some different gathering spaces that people were looking for to have out there. Among some other things, and John might be able to fill you if I missed any here. I might pick some up on the next slide. The construction cost has obviously been a big part, and over the past couple of years, costs have kind of swung all over. Steel prices are high now, lumber prices are high now, and there's a handful of things that have caused us to kind of go back and have to continue to make alterations on this as that stuff changes. And then long-term use also played into it of how can this be used long-term? How can we keep maintenance down? and how can we set it up so that should it want to be expanded on in the future or changed, that that ability is there to be done. And then one of the other big drivers, probably the second or third biggest driver, is just the permitting requirements and getting things through the permitting cycle with the state and Army Corps. The Army Corps is still hanging out there. We're expecting, told that we should be hearing back in the next month, hopefully with a decision. The state has permitted it as we have it set up now. So get to the next slide. So this is the current state of the project. After we switched, in order to get this through permitting, we ended up switching the mouse on here, that bigger north dock that was here down to this side. So it's on the south now. We did have to take out the connecting portion of the berm to shore. The state wanted this to open for water flow. And other than that, it's pretty similar. We did, in some of our early cost savings, just trying to get things a little more efficient, we did size down the width on this platform here and on the berm a little bit. Nothing that was too noticeable, but it was, made some efficiencies both in construction and just material costs. There is on the south dock, if I continue, where we had to take this section of berm out, there's an arced line here that's actually in the water. It's what's called a wave eater. It's a wave attenuation device. It kind of looks like a big buoy, swim buoy system that when there's just a light little bit of chop, it helps to knock that down for these boats that would be sitting over here, or people are paddling around and that sort of thing in here. What you see right here is a floating dock system with 2 finger piers coming off of it. The intent is to have electric at these locations, as well as being set up for 2 more of these finger piers to go in. At these piers, you get a spot here, 2, 3, 4. Currently, you'd be able to more broadside, and then down the road, if this ends up being a heavy use, you put a couple more of these finger piers in and add some more of those. And then this decking here would be a walkway, a hard surface walkway. Originally, we were looking at doing timber decking, but timber prices have gone through the roof, and the labor involved with that just got to be too expensive. So what we're looking at now with these platforms in this current situation and in the future ones, are the other options I show you, is actually using a spancrete type product, something to be a preformed concrete slab. There are some different things they can do with it to color it and, or put stone and that sort of thing in it. An example of it would be the Municipal Service Center has a spancrete walls. So when you look at the outside of that, that's a sample of one that has the stone in it. So you can still get some aesthetic looks out of it. We haven't gotten to the point of actually doing that yet and pricing out the differences to add some of that stuff on. But that's what we're looking at, this area, this, and also this smaller walkway up here. So then when you get down to the end of the dock, this is another mirrored section here on the south side. And then on this side, there would also be sun sails that are a sunshade system that has some bends and folds to it. The idea is that it kind of looks like sails on a ship. And I can show you an example of that in a few minutes here. So, and then this center piece here that you see with kind of this outline here, that is a berm, stone berm in the water, and that acts as a break wall to keep things a little quieter and calmer back behind here, particularly where these small craft are, and then also up into this area here for the kayak launch. It'll do a pretty good job, we think. There's a little bit of opening here that we've got at this point that won't completely calm it down. There'll be a little bit of refraction off of the ore dock, but it should still be pretty calm, given, so long as there isn't anything too treacherous going on. And if that's the case, hopefully there won't be people out there kayaking anyway. So then on the north dock, what we've got up here is this is that existing kind of roadway with the public parking here in front of the Marquette One place. We are proposing to make some changes down here at the end to provide a loop, a drop-off loop. There's also some stamped concrete in the middle and down here to dress it up a little bit, but add some character and some additional hard surface area that, should something be going on, there's ability for public service or safety people to park in these, or potentially a food truck or something up to whatever is going on down the road. We also have some bollards that encircle this to keep cars and traffic in the loop and not up onto, this is where the existing bike path is right now, up into this area. This, what you see right here, is the existing concrete cap that's down by the water now. So this would be access from this loop onto this cap. And then coming along here is the accessible kayak launch. So folks would be able to unload here and then bring their kayaks or canoes over here and launch into this area. And then we've got that timber cribbing that's out there that I mentioned earlier. It comes to just like almost right to the water surface, depending if the water's up high or low. Right now, it's a little bit submerged. A couple of years ago, it was actually sticking out of the water, and there's some trees that have grown out of it. We're proposing to fill on that with stone, similar to what we have over here, and then provide a flat area up on top here that would provide access out to this walkway here. We'd be driving steel piles in and then placing some of that concrete planking down here to get out to an observation area at the end here. And there is this window here with the idea of being able to see down into the water, so folks that can't get in the water or really lean over the side can kind of come over this, look down into it and see the piles that are under there and such. So all of this will still have the pile fields in here. The south one, the pile field actually goes at a bit of an angle from what we're looking at. The dock goes perpendicular from shore. So this dashed line is all the existing pile fields that you'd be able to see off of here. You'd start walking over it. This one, the pier would actually go over top of them. So you'd be looking down at them, see them down inside of here. So that's kind of where we last left it. And the last time I presented it to the commission this is where we were at and going with it. Given some of the cost changes over the past year and trying to get things to the final piece of construction, where you're looking at having to shave a little bit out of this, or a fair amount out of it cost wise. But we've been working with JF Brennan, who a couple of their representatives are on the phone here, to look at some different ways we can approach some of the construction tasks. One of the big ones was some of the drilling and tapping into the bedrock we had to do, that we were able to look at some different methods and equipment that they have available to them to sharpen some costs on these things, and then make some changes. So what I've got is I've got a couple different options to kind of give you an idea of what it would take to get this into what the current budget with the brownfield dollars is. So if we look at the existing one here and we switch to the next, you'll see the big change here is that the north dock has become significantly shorter. It's down to, from back on here, I've got a dimension that's about 75 feet from back inside of this dock coming out here. On the current setup, it's at 270 feet from that same point. So that shortens up significantly. That's the biggest change on it. We also get rid of, there was an additional ramp right here and some retaining walls and such that really is redundant because it's accessible up off of the path here. So we're removing some of that stuff, shortening this up. And then this side here is also shortened up by 2 of the pile sections, or the sections of substructure. So it comes back 60 feet. So if I switch back and forth again, you'll see a shortening up of both of them here. Still maintains the integrity of the project, of what it's doing and the aspects that were on it. Just shortens it up a bit. So this one here is still at about 600 feet, about 2 football fields long off of shore from where it was originally at. Let's see, tough to see there, but it would have been, I think, 630. I think it's at 570 now. So that's this first option here. It's shortening 2 of the sections out of this to shorten this back, and then shortening this back and doing some simplifications on shore here. But otherwise, in the whole, it's fairly similar to what we're looking at originally. And doing this one brings us basically right at our budget, or pretty close to it. Something we can work with anyway, if not even a little under it. So something that's doable. So let me take a look at another one here. So this one, same sort of thing. This gets shortened up the same right here. However, instead of shortening up the southern dock here, what we've looked at doing instead is removing 90 feet, basically the mirrored image of this piece here where those shade sails are, removing that off this north section, along with this and some of that simplifications on shore. And that one also brings us down into a striking range here with the budget. The last one that I'll show you, I guess, just to, as another, just kind of look at it to get a feel for the changes in dollars, is keeping the south dock the same and just full removal of the north dock would bring us under budget. But just to kind of go back through here again, the current, and then there's one schematic and a second one with the difference being the length of that southern dock. So I guess at this would be a good point probably to just ask if there's any questions, especially
You're cutting out just a little bit, George, but I think we got the gist of it. Yeah, I think it would be a good time
Okay.
for questions for commissioners. So I will roll through. We will start with Mayor Pro Tem Health.
Thank you. And thank you, George, and your team. You have been indefatigable, I think is the word. Steadfast. Really, really appreciate all the work that you've done. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about, to help me understand the consequence of the sizing, about how many people could fit on the different ones if they're 6 feet apart? Or have you looked, do you have any way of estimating that?
It's not an exercise that we've done. I'm hopeful that by the time this is constructed, hopefully at the end of this year, that we won't have to be 6 feet apart anymore, I guess. But it's not an exercise we've looked at. It is, if we look at the southern dock is 600 feet long. The deck section is 30 feet wide. The berm is 30 feet wide, and then that southern deck section is 30 feet wide. So, there's a lot of room out there. There's, and then the northern one, I think the center on that is just under, I think it's 27 or 28 feet wide. So,
George, just to add to that, I just ran a quick number on the south dock, and I'm roughly getting a 6x6 grid. For a sense of scale, it's 475 people for the shortened south dock.
If each one had their square drawn for them.
6x6, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the maintenance question is something that has just, I know you sort of touched on it briefly, that it was, you've considered it. Do these changes significantly change any of the maintenance, such as taking in the dampener or any like some underwater maintenance, above ground maintenance? We had talked about there'd be planting and some landscaping. Doesn't look like there's going to be any of that now. Could you just update us on that?
Sure. Yeah, we don't have a surfacing shown on it right now, mainly because we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves, and we're trying to conserve our bit of design budget we've got to get to the end of this thing here to put it into it and not just make too many pictures. So there would be, the idea is that we'd still have some sort of path or, some landscaping or something on there. We'll have to see exactly what that ends up looking like, but the idea is to still have something that's pleasant like we had before. And then one of the items that we've tried to make it pretty low maintenance the whole way through. The original decking with the timber was going to have pretty thick decking on it and shouldn't have needed any sort of real regular work on it. However, there would be at some point down, I guess, some board replacement here and there. The newly proposed that saves us a lot of costs on that decking is to use that precast concrete panels. And so that won't take really any maintenance, at all, or very, very little. So that will certainly be a happy thing for the Public Works and Parks folks that are going to be out there working on it. The sales are something that should come down in the wintertime. We've talked to that and been through that with some of the Public Works folks and Parks already. They're meant to have that done, and they're not overly terrible to do with standard equipment. There is that wave eater buoy down there. I'm not sure if that can be left in or not. I believe it can, but potentially that might need to be disconnected on one end for ice. And then the floating dock and the kayak launch are the kayak launch. As we've talked to the vendor, they've claimed that we can leave these in and they are structurally sound to the ice. And we've seen that they can be and could and should be. However, it would probably be prudent to just detach them so that they're free floating, or bring them up out of the water if possible. So that the kayak launch might be something that we either look at anchoring it and just letting it off of the piles, perhaps pulling it up onto the pile cap. The floating docks down below, we're still working through what we might be able to do there in our final design to make that as simple as possible and sound for the long term. But otherwise, you know, the site is pretty low maintenance. The berms will be stone that have been sized for water stability. Over time, if there's some ice and such, those might need to be just dressed a little bit or some stuff adjusted around, as you'd expect with ice and stone in the Great Lakes. But it shouldn't be a regular thing you have to worry about. You know, the waves shouldn't knock them around. It just might be the ice pressing a little bit here and there.
Mm-hmm. And then my last question: now that the finger piers are down in the southern side, if I was going to bring my 17-foot canoe down, am I going to launch closer to the oar dock, or am I going to bring it down over to where the finger piers are?
You could do either. There's the potential that these finger piers could have boats docked at them. The idea would be that you would bring, you know, most likely bring it here and then carry it along this sidewalk right here and then shoot it straight out into the harbor.
Okay.
So, but you could, I think if somebody was coming from this direction, it'd be hard not to probably just get tempted to go down to the beach anyway here. But yeah, the idea is to drop off and then just carry it right across the sidewalk here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Mayer, any questions, discussion?
I don't think I do at this exact moment, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Commissioner Stonehouse?
Yes, Your Honor, we've got a couple. Hi, George. Great work. Thank you for plowing through the kind of forever project, I guess.
Yeah, no problem.
But a couple of questions relating to the stone berm on the South Pier.
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, that water is fairly deep.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's going to be a pile of money just for rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any alternatives than making a rock bridge?
Yeah. Well, we've explored some different things. We've explored, you know, sheet pile cells and sheet piling out there and such, but this was the most cost effective.
Okay. Do the existing pilings remain, or do they go away?
They remain. There's only a few that there's one breasting dolphin up here, which is these kind of larger pile clusters. There's one here that would need to be relocated that we're actually hoping to maybe pull out and to see if we can stick it up in here or some landscape item or cut it off. But that should be it. There might be a couple that come out, but it should be very minimal.
How about everything off the end of the new pier? I mean,
On the north one here, up here.
Yeah, that area in there.
Yeah, that'll all be untouched.
That'll all be untouched. Then the same thing would be true for the pier at the south side.
Yes. Yeah, and this one actually, because we run perpendicular to shore, actually veers away a little bit from the pile field, where this one lies straight in it. So I think they both give kind of a neat, different look at, you know, the historic piles out there.
Why not angle the south pier to go over the existing piling field?
It had to do with bottomlands issues and concerns, and having having the docks perpendicular to shore to make sure that the property lines extended and matched up with the docks. It is also one of the reasons on the south one was after we shifted this larger one from the north to the south in order to provide that wave coming action behind it. If we had it turned down like this, it was just wide open still to that southern southeastern patch that goes through here. So we rotated it perpendicular to try to keep this calm behind it.
George, you gave us 4 choices. Can you put some numbers behind the choices?
As far as costs?
Yeah, what the estimated cost.
Or number 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, well, how much is number 1? How much is number 2? How much is number 3? How much is number 4?
So what the exercise we've done here is, we don't have it down to dollars and cents on it. What we do have from working with JF Brennan through this is that they're all at roughly the $5.5 million mark, plus or minus, or 5.5 or maybe minus $100,000. So these different bits, we're kind of working through a handful of kind of internal menu items, I guess, to try to come to a different combination of things that would get us right into that range. So they're all, well, with the exception of this one here was at about 6.5, I believe. Nick or Zach, correct me if I'm wrong. So the current full-on project is right around 6.5 million. These other two, well, these two here are both at around 5.5. And then this one with the full removal, I think was at like 5.4 or 5.3, roughly. And these are, kind of rough budget numbers. So that's why I'm using round numbers as well on it. So
okay.
We know that they're all within, if you were to select one of these 3 options, that we can do some fine tuning and make sure that we've got it within budget.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your work on it.
Yeah, no problem.
Commissioner Bonzo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank all of you for your incredible work on this. I think this is a very elegant solution. My personal preference, I just want to state, would be to keep that northern dock in the design. So I really like proposals with number 1 and 2, especially since there's not a major cost difference and everything seems to be within budget. So thanks for your work on this. Just had a couple of quick questions. First about accessibility. So I just wanted to confirm that, first of all, that at the north dock, the kayak launch is still going to be ADA compliant, and also that the removal of that ramp is not going to impede accessibility of either the north dock or the kayak launch. Is that correct?
That's correct. So mouse here again. So if you're in this drop-off loop right here, we'd have a nearly flat within accessibility guidelines here. I think it's less than a 2% slope across this piece of pathway through here to get onto this concrete panel. As you come from about this area here, we climb up to the full height up in this area. So if you're dropped off over on this corner, you could come straight off here at a level drop. And I'd have to check with this grade right here, but I think this is under a 5% grade here as well, which is within accessibility standards. But you can access anything in here off of the easy drop-off points. And everything over here is level from the road.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad to see the, I think we had a public comment. We've had a couple of public comments about over the past year that we've been working on this project and going back and forth about the viewing deck at the end of the north dock. And I think that's it's really cool to be able to look down into the water and actually see the pilings and what's under there. So I'm glad that we were able to still include that. My last question would just be with regards to the southern dock. So would the proposed, kind of like sail structure that you were talking about still exist in all 3 of these these alternative proposals here, because I think that's a pretty cool, you know, aesthetic design feature. I really like that, and I'd like to keep it if at all possible.
Correct. And I'm just going to see if I can find, I can pull up a picture of what that looks like for the commissioners who haven't seen it yet. Give me a moment here. Should I think have it. Let's see. Well, this is these are them down here at the end. They've got you know, taller piles and shorter piles in the front, shorter piles in the back. So this fabric kind of swoops up and then comes back down. That wasn't the one I was looking for. Let me see if I check another one. Got a lot of presentations in here. So I know I've got a view. There we go. This one will show a view kind of from the lake of what that's intended to look like. Let's get this into a presentation.
I remember what one you're talking about. You know right where it is.
Here's one angle here, but we actually have this one here. So if you're out in the water, you'd see, you know, the idea was to try to create something that as you come around the side of it, it kind of looks like sails, or it's just a, you know, a design aesthetic to it to try to add some interest, as well as a shaded area out here to hang out in, a place to be.
Great, thanks for that. That's all the questions I have right now. I just want to reiterate, I'm really impressed with the work that you all were able to do, so thanks again.
Great. Commissioner Davis?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Smith. I'm going to piggyback on Commissioner Vonzel's accessibility. I'm trying to walk myself through the launch of a kayak. And if I am by myself, I take my car down and I go around the loop and I drop my kayak off. And then I have to drive my car back up to parking. So I'm wondering what is going to be happening with the parking here, because I'm assuming this will bring a lot more people down to this area. So parking is one issue. And then are there issues with the fact that I just dropped my kayak there and now other people are trying to drop their kayaks off before we launch? I'm just wanting to think through that whole process.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that we've actually discussed a good handful of times, especially very early in the project. You know, it's less than ideal to not be able to park right at it. There is the public parking space on Marquette, one place here, which my experience down there, currently they've had some open spaces in them that will be useful, but you know, I would expect summertime these will probably be pretty filled up, and you might be able to park here or up in the couple of public lots that are around here. It's something we've talked quite a bit about. I don't have a perfect answer for it. The parking situation kind of is what it is, I guess.
Those parking spaces that you just noted down there, are there going to be some handicap there? So if I am in a wheelchair, I go over there and I drop my kayak off, and now I go and park my car and get into my wheelchair and then come down there to launch my kayak.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, then where does my wheelchair go? I mean, what if I am by myself?
Mm-hmm. Right. I don't recall off the top of my head. I don't know if Jim, if you might be aware if there was currently handicapped spaces that are painted down there. I don't recall. It wouldn't be too big of a exercise to do that to them or to add some if they weren't there. It would probably be a good idea if it weren't already there, to add a couple down at the, you know, towards the bottom of this here. But yeah, I think it, you know, if somebody is going down there, it might take a little bit of planning if they're on their own as to how they're going to approach it.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure that if we're saying that there's universal access, that we truly are making it easy for those people who need it. But that's good. I understand where you're coming from. So I also took note of the fact that you said people like to see those pilings there. And if my historical memory is serving me correct, this whole thing started because we have to do something with them because of the state agreement? And just it would be good to refresh my memory on that and maybe the public's memory on that. And that probably, George, isn't a question for you, but maybe for John.
Yeah, I think that one might be best by if Mike is there to handle it, or John. I can try, but I might get something a little off.
Yeah, this whole project started as a requirement from the state to reuse or to remove the pilings in there. And the question came up in our conversations recently as to, you know, the fact that there are going to be some that are not reused, and actually no piles out here will be reused. Additional piles will be put over them.
Yeah.
But there are sections that wouldn't be utilized in the north and in the south, and the state has given their blessing to this design and, you know, the various iterations of it, and that hasn't been an issue for them. So I think their major concern was that we were reutilizing the area where the piles exist. And if we weren't going to do that, they were going to request that we remove them. So,
which is so expensive, I understand. So if in design 4, if we remove the northern pier, does that still keep us in compliance with what the state is requiring?
Yep. So what we've got, if we come back up here and start at this one, this is what's permitted. So working from this permitted schematic, we can reduce our impacts. We can't add to them. We can't make any substantial changes in, you know, locations or anything like that. But if we were to remove sections or piles or shorten up the fill areas, that would be just fine.
Okay.
As long as we're lessening our impact.
Okay, just a couple other ones. One, looking at your pictures, there's no railings or anything on these piers, and that's appropriate. That's acceptable.
Well, there would be railings on some of it. So this one here would have railings on it, coming all around it. And then trying to remember this area, because it's meant for boat mooring, does not have railings. So this one would be open to the water and has the cleats and bollards through here. There would be rails around this piece because it's not intended as a boat docking area. And I can't recall, I think we had, I think there's railings along this piece right here as well on the back side.
Okay, so there's basically railings everywhere where there's not expected to be boat dockings. And
Correct.
which brings to mind the number of people, I want to say youth, that jump off the cement wall at Matson Lower Harbor Park, and I'm wondering if that's going to be more of an issue, but that kind of just sits back there in my brain. The last question I have is, the boardwalk that is currently there, I'm glad you're not using timbers because they seem to always be needing replaced, and they're sometimes a little dangerous because people can trip on them. So is there anything in this project that might replace that boardwalk?
So to a point on this northern piece here, let me get one to the newer one. What we're actually looking at doing with this current revision is we would take out a section of that boardwalk where we can, using this where the supports are spaced. We'd fill this. That fill would actually be used during construction to get in and out of here, and then we would pave this afterwards or surface it somehow, whether it's paved, concrete, or some combination there to allow that smooth transition up onto the dock here.
Okay. But the rest of the boardwalk would remain a boardwalk.
Correct. The rest would remain a boardwalk. We will be adding in some minor repair just to this planter right here that's getting a little undermined, but otherwise the rest of that is not part of the project. We're trying to work with it around it.
I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Yep.
And our city manager had some things he wanted to add based on some of the questions that were asked. We've got him here, and then I'll go to Commissioner Hanley next.
Thank you. Just to clarify a point, Commissioner Davis, the
what George described by removing that north pier will not invalidate the permit. However, we do have a separate requirement from the DNR to reuse that area. So I think by removing that northern pier, we would be in violation of that requirement, but not necessarily the current permit we have, if that makes sense. So we don't recommend removing that north pier whatsoever, just to make sure that we do not cause any questions at all that come from the DNR.
Okay.
So that's all.
Yeah, and the permitting and requirements and records and everything were a bit cloudy as we all kind of, made our way through it with the regulators in the state. There was a lot of things going on there to try to come to where it's at.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Hanley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I only have one real question. So you've put forth a couple different options for us. Is there a reason that one would be better over the other of the two that leave the pier? I'm not talking about the one that would take up the northern pier. They both seem very similar to me. And I don't know if in your mind, one is significantly better than the other.
No, I don't think one really is over the other. I think what it comes to really is, I switch between them here, get the mouse in the right spot, is the change between whether this is longer or if there's this extra piece here. And we could take that piece could be removed in the middle here or something different too. It's more kind of scale of what's removed, that 3 sections are 90 feet. This one reaches out a little farther into the lake. The other one has a little wider endpoint for potential use at the end. So I don't think there's a right or wrong on it. I think that it's really up to the commissioners of what you guys think would be better use for the city.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, well, I guess it's me. So, excellent job. I feel like we've been talking about this for years at this point. Did we start this in 2018? Is that when we started this?
Yeah.
Seems so long ago now. And I have to admit, I had to look back at, if you go to the current schematic, I had to look back because I didn't remember the 2 piers switching when I was reviewing the materials, but that's because it was during my maternity leave last year. But when I was looking, only 3 of the commissioners currently at this work session would have been at that work session a year ago. So if you have some more questions or people wondering what's going on, that's why.
Yep.
You've done a nice job giving a little bit of history and walking us through where we are now and to be able to help us make a decision. And yeah, I mean, I think most of the questions I would have asked have been answered. I'm really hopeful that we can get this project rolling for this year. If we can go between the proposed 1 and 2, as far as I'm concerned, I think that those are the only 2 options that I would entertain at this point. And we're not making a decision tonight, but I would say, it would be my thought we'd be looking at one of those 2. And I don't know. That's the question, right? That's you want some direction from us tonight as to which direction to go. We're not taking a vote tonight, but you want some consensus, and I don't know that I have an answer. My gut says number 1, but I couldn't tell you really why, because it's hard without like a visual. What are they called? Rendering. It's hard for me to kind of visualize what the differences would look like. I'm wondering if a wider dock would be helpful to facilitate potential events back when we can congregate. If that might be kind of more interesting and give some more opportunity, but not really. I don't know if it's enough of a reason. So
yeah,
I'm kind of at a loss for which one. I think they're both good options, and you guys have done a nice job.
Yeah, I think the only other real way to look at it, and I guess from my perspective, it seems like that might be good to have that bigger area to use it. Should you want to have some sort of small gathering or larger, medium-sized gathering there at the end. The other thing I guess to consider would be if you have this option, it might be easier in the future to add on those few sections than to have to try to deal with putting fill in. You'd already have the fill there. Permitting wise and such, that might be a lot simpler to make happen, and production wise a little simpler than trying to bring all the rock and build out the berm. to extend that if you wanted to get to that full length. down
Well, I
the
guess
road.
I have two questions leading off of this then. So one, the original proposed the 6.5 million.
Mhm.
I don't know that we want to spend an extra million to do that. But we don't have any money sitting in brownfield that we can use for that. I'm just looking at Mike and Gary here, and I'm getting a lot of no's. So I just thought I would ask if there was some way to reallocate some of those brownfield dollars. Not that we would want to do it, but if that was an option. And then my second question, I think I'm going to ask my cruise expert, Commissioner Stonehouse here. Wasn't that something we were thinking about at one point with these docks? And is the south dock something that could accommodate that at some point? Or is that a concern that we even need to be thinking about?
You're
Where
muted.
he went. Oh, he's on mute. Commissioner Stonehouse, you're still on mute, Commissioner Stonehouse. You have to start again, sorry. I did that earlier too.
My fault, Your Honor. If you've got a 75-foot boat, you could easily put it on the south pier. If you've got a cruise ship, you're not even going to think about it.
Okay.
It's not enough depth. It's not the right pier that you want to be, and it's the wrong location.
Okay, you just had mentioned it a couple times, and it was just something that was on my radar, but a larger boat could dock at that south pier.
A larger boat, as we would see as a sport boat or something stopping, as privately owned, certainly could use it. And use it well for a day and go in and have something to eat in town and come back out and leave. I think the intention has always been to simply make that a transient stop. So you could go get a hamburger, go to a bistro, and then leave, not some place to leave a boat or permanently moor one. It's not a marina. That's not the intended purpose for it. No joke intended, it's not a marina.
And for those commissioners that may not know, this has been called the Not a Marina project for a number of years currently. So the city manager is wanting to talk again. He's over here hovering.
Well, I was going to suggest to the mayor that it might be prudent to ask the contractor if one or the other might be easier to help us achieve our budget. That might be an unfair question, but it might help us decide which one is better. That's all.
Thanks, Mike. Good thought. And thank you, Commissioner Stonehouse, for chiming in there.
Yeah, this is Zach Ponser with JF Brennan. The either dock is a horse apiece. We've kind of evaluated both of them to get to your budget number, so I think it's really up to what you guys want.
Well, I guess, I would lean towards the wider dock because I think it would be interesting for folks to be able to put chairs out there and have a small wedding or a small concert, or just, I think there might be some opportunities there in the future that may be limited if it's a narrower dock, but I don't know if it's a good enough reason, so.
Can I ask a question?
Those are my thoughts. Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, this is Mayor Pro Tem. I'm thinking about the bicycle traffic that also comes, particularly in the summer and the nicer times. And dog walkers. Are we going to have 30 feet wide? Though is what I heard. That's like the actual width of that. Is that the width of the dock, or that's the width of your walking space? And how much room are we going to have for passing? For passing with two different lanes of travel, I guess.
Sure. So this area here where the decking is 30 feet. So that, for a visual, that's about the width of a city street.
Yeah.
And same with this piece right here is also 30 feet, as is this piece here. One thing that could be considered if as a merging of the two concepts, this piece that's taken out could be put back in, and it could be removed from, down here or something as well. So there is a little bit else we can do. We could keep the full length and take, the section that comes out could be taken out maybe up above the small craft docking. So you'd be able to walk down this, get to here, then maybe have a section that comes out here. So there's some different ways to work it, I guess, for consideration.
Actually, I just had a thought. Picking up Commissioner Davis's good point about the state of the board. I have also noticed the danger of boards missing and that edge has been broken for a while. if we did make a shorter dock and save some money, could we put that money into rehabbing the walkway right by Hampton Inn there? Would that make any sense? Because that I'm down there a couple times a week, and it's there's boards missing, and yeah, it's needing some upkeep.
John, I don't know if you know, I know that one time there was, or last year we talked, there was some replacement of some boards happening. I'm not sure if that was, how extensive that was, or if it's going to be in good shape when that's done.
Yeah, and maybe this is a question for Gary, not to put him on the spot, but I do recall DPW having I'm not sure if it classified as a capital project or not, but a massive replacement of boards project, and it was slated to happen either last year or the year before, and I think it's gotten pushed for various different reasons, but I believe it's still on the docket to do that. They have done replacement of the ones that were, fully broken and a hazard as they find them, and then they did do some cribbing to that planter that George mentioned as you come off the south, what would be the south pier. There was a planter that was undermined and was falling. So DPW did do some work to that, but I believe there's still a project going to happen with that. And I don't know if Gary can speak to that.
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay? So for that particular project, it is on the books to take care of, and we'll take a little bit better look at this on the last slide when we're going to get a little bit more into the finances. But so the whole Founders Landing project, which is everything that's going on there, it's in the budget to start accumulating maintenance funds so that going forward, when these types of events happen, there will be money already on hand in the maintenance reserve. Because right now there isn't a maintenance reserve, so anything that basically goes on, we might be looking at, the general fund having to front the money, but at a later date, the general fund will be reimbursed for that. It's just that up front, we might have to provide the money. But like I said, we can take a little bit better look at that when we get to the last slide there.
So can we do that last slide? I think that might be good to cover and then see what other questions we have.
It's up to you. I can talk about it now, or we can wait until we're done with the presentation.
I think, is there more to the presentation, George?
There is, but it's city staff presentation at this point. So John, I don't know if you want me to just run the slide or if you want to share your screen or whoever you plan.
Yeah, if you can run it,
let's
that'd
run
be
through the rest of the slides and then we can see what other questions the commissioners have.
Let's see here. I'm trying to. So I guess the first piece of this is just a little background on the construction contract. The city commission approved, I guess, entering into a contract with Kokosing Industrial, Grocer Marine Division at such time as both the Eagle permit and the Army Corps of Engineer permits were approved. At this time, the Army Corps of Engineers permit has not yet been approved, so we have never entered into that contract. Since that time, we discussed this a little bit, but the Eagle permitting, the changes necessary to this project to switch the docks and to allow for littoral flow really kind of changed the dynamics of construction. And what it did was it kind of took a lot of the things out of Kokosing's wheelhouse, and they would have been subcontracting a lot of that stuff out. And GEI has been reaching out and working with JF Brennan out of Duluth, and a lot of these things that would have been subbed out by Kokosing are well within their wheelhouse. So that's been a good partnership. They've assisted quite a bit with the design of the piers as you saw them tonight. So we're going to recommend based on the fact that those are really the two companies that could do something like this. And to top that off, the coasting is no longer really interested because they're going to be spending the next 3 years or better at the Sioux Locks. Their estimates, grew by about 40% as all these changes happened. So that put us way out of budget. And Brennan has been great with helping get it back within budget. So moving forward, staff's going to recommend that we, contract with Brennan with those two numbers that we've been given from each company, based on the fact that they're the only ones that could do it. So that was that slide. Does anybody have any questions about that contract?
I think we'll roll through whatever slides you have, John, and then we can have the commission ask questions
Okay.
after.
Sounds good. George, if you could go to the next one. So just the financial overview, we've kind of touched on a lot of this, but generally speaking, we've been discussing a budget of $5.67 million since the beginning of this project. The first slide that George showed was between 6.5 and $6.6 million for that longer set of piers. And then as we discussed, all the options bring it within $100,000 of the $5.67 million. So everything you've seen tonight gets us where we need to get to. And it sounds like we've gotten a little bit of consensus on what the commission is interested in. And just a kind of reminder, and for all the commissioners that are now serving that weren't when this project started, all the funds from this stem from the whole brownfield development plan for that whole area down there. So the revenues from everything that's been developed with Marquette 1, 2, and 3 in the future, the hotel, and all the other developments down there, ultimately would be paying for this project to provide access to Lake Superior to the general public. And this has been worked into the brownfield TIF plan from the very beginning. So with that, there is, when we get to the next slide, there is a little shortfall in the initial bond payment. So maybe George, if you can go to the next slide. Now, you see on there item 7, Pier redevelopment bond. If you look out through that, the first year of 2021 has about $105,000 of bond payment, and then it's just those all the way through 2024 is just the interest payments, and then 2025 would start principal and interest for the full thing. And that initial bit in 2021, we'd have, and I believe maybe part of 2022, Gary can speak to that a little bit more, but we'd have to cover that in some way, or there's maybe another option to capitalize it. So when we initially spoke about this in previous work sessions in previous years, the will of the commission at that time, if I'm remembering correctly, was to use general fund dollars to cover that, and then the brownfield TIF would pay that back on the backside with interest. So I'm not sure if that's still kind of the interest of the commission to do that, and maybe Gary can clarify a little more if I've not relayed that in a great way, but there's a little concern that we do have a little bit of a gap to cover in the first year.
Thank you, John. I see Gary's standing here. I think he's ready to explain, so let him go for it.
Yeah, I was trying to wave you down, John, but you couldn't see me. So the slide you're looking at now, it was mentioned a little earlier, how long have you been dealing with this? Well, this slide was actually produced almost exactly 2 years ago. We did a work session in March of 2019, and Matt McClellan with the Brownfield produced this slide, and late last night he was gracious enough to update it for us. And just keep in mind, this is just giving us a bird's eye view of what this might look like. These numbers are not by any stretch written in stone, but they should be close enough for us to play a game of hand grenades, I guess, with all of this stuff. And basically what it's showing the entire Founders Landing project, which, as you can see with all the projects going on, it's really kind of its own little village or town at this point. That's really how it's a good way to look at it with all these different projects. So the one we're looking at, if you look under obligations, is number 7, the Pier redevelopment bond. That's what we're focusing on tonight. But all these other obligations play a factor into how we're looking at this. And then when you go down a little bit lower, so that's the expense side. Then when you go down lower, it's looking at, well, what is the TIF bringing in? And I'm assuming everybody knows what I mean when I say TIF, but if you don't, please let me know. I will try to explain or confuse you even more. And so then it gets down to additional estimates. So this is just estimating with all the construction that's going on now, what that is going to bring in and at what year it's going to start coming in. So this is just a best guess at this point. So the way this works, tax day is December 31. So whatever is built and on the ground on December 31, that's what the assessor is going to assign the taxable value of. So if it's not completely done by December 31, just whatever percentage is done, that's what they will pay taxes on the next year. So it could be a case of, let's say it's 50% done on December 31, and then say January 1, miraculously it's completely done. We can only assess the taxable value on that 50%, and then the following December 31, then we can assess the full 100%. So there's a little bit of a lag time there, but that's just the rules that the state gives us to work with. So what we're looking at for number 7, for the Nada Marina or Pier redevelopment bond, and this is just kind of a best guess of what we're going to look at for what the debt service will be. We're looking at issuing a 20-year bond, and as you saw, you're going to have a choice of what amount you want to issue that at, and I'll get a little bit into more of that later. But so the way Mac is showing it on the spreadsheet in 2021, we're going to pick up an interest payment. So the way it works, 6 months after you issue your bond, you have to pay an interest payment. And we're going to try to structure this bond so that it's interest only for the first 3 years. So that will take away some pressure from the Founders Landing to not have to come up with having to pay principal for the first 3 years. And that really helps make this work. Now, Mac did put in a 6-month interest payment in 2021. Unless we get this bond issued by April 1st, which isn't very likely at this point, that's not going to be a factor for 2021. So if you look at the very bottom line, the annual balance, that shows what we're anticipating for the expenses for all these projects, and then subtracting out the projected TIF collection, he's showing roughly $132,000 shortfall. I really think you can take off $104,700 of that, so it's a lot smaller amount. And it could actually, when we looked at this 2 years ago, I was sending out the warning signs that there's going to be a shortfall in the TIF collection in a pretty sizable amount for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years. And the message was, the longer we can put it off, the better we'll be. And I really wasn't trying to jinx the project at that time, but it has worked out to our advantage on this spreadsheet. Now, it hasn't worked out to our advantage in getting the project done, and as John and George have pointed out, construction costs have gone up as well, but as far as financing, it's worked out to our advantage. So there's still a potential in 21 and 2022 of being a small shortfall, in which case we would have the general fund front the money. Now, the good news is, and this is what I think helped the city commission kind of swallow that pill 2 years ago, was that the general fund will get reimbursed for any money it puts into this. And again, it works to our advantage because the brownfield is going to pay us 5% interest on that. And I'm telling you right now, the city is getting less than 1% on its money that it's investing now. So it's actually a pretty good investment for us if we did have to front some money. But we're hoping that's not going to be the case. This is kind of a worst case scenario where it looks like maybe the first 2 years, if we start getting this done this construction season and we get the bond issued, it looks like maybe the first 2 years there's potential for a very small shortfall in each of those 2 years. And if it does happen, the general fund will pay that and then get reimbursed and paid interest for that. And what I was talking to a little bit earlier, if you look at number 8 under the obligations where it says long-term capital fund, that is actually the maintenance fund. Right now it's projected in 2022 they will start using the TIF money to start building that fund up. And that's what will be used to pay for the maintenance costs, hopefully over the life of the project, or at least until the TIF expires, and then hopefully there'll be a pretty sizable sum there so that the city isn't harmed, because a lot of times the city goes into these projects and really doesn't give much thought, what's going to be the long-term maintenance. Well, fortunately, the city did have the foresight when this whole plan was coming together that, yes, we will need to do that. And also, just a little bit, if you're kind of wondering what's the difference between issuing a bond for 5.6 million versus 6.6 million, the yearly debt service over 20 years, it's about a $70,000 difference. So if you wanted to do the full-blown $6.6 million project, you know, we're going to have to add probably about $70,000 more to the debt service calculations, which really doesn't change the picture that much. So I just wanted to throw that out there so that you don't have to sweat. It's just really what you feel like is the best bang for the buck for the city. So hopefully I explained that, or if I just confuse the heck out of you, please let me know and I'll try to confuse you more. But that's really all I had to say, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Do we have any other slides? Or is this the last one?
This is last.
That was the last one.
Okay. Quick question, and then I'll see if the commission has questions. But Gary, you mentioned a maintenance fund, and you told me where it was on here, and I was trying to find it the whole time.
It's number 8, the long-term capital fund under obligations.
Thank you. I was looking for it, and I was not lining up in where I saw it. I see that now. So it starts at 50,600.
600, correct.
Thank you. I was looking on the screen, not finding it. I can't see the screen because Gary's got it. So,
oh, you can turn it around.
Well, I think people may have questions for you. So,
oh, here, you can look at it.
I need to see the commission. I need to see who wants to talk. I can't do it blind. I was trying, guys, but I couldn't. Commissioners, questions for Gary or John on the financials or the contractor at this point? I guess what I'm kind of thinking is I'd like to open it up one last time for the commission to ask Gary or John questions about these two things, and then provide some thoughts on which option, option or options you like moving forward. Does that seem reasonable? I'm looking for head nods, shaking or no. Okay, so we'll go back through the commission, starting with Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
Thank you. I wondered if it was possible for Brennan to provide any examples of similar structures that they've worked on just to see the work they've done. I really appreciate them stepping in, and I'd like to know a little bit more about their work. But really welcome to Marquette, and sounds like we might have finally figured out a way to get this done. And then on the finances side, I was present at the previous meetings, and things have, pretty much, things haven't changed. Things are understood, I guess. And then my final thought is I would be interested. Length isn't as important to me as being able to maintain it in great shape and maintaining that whole waterfront area in great shape. And so I'd be willing to go shorter if it meant that we had the ability to make it what is there to be just as good as it could be and then maintain it over the long term. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
This is Zach with Brennan. I'd be happy to send George some project profiles so you guys could get a feeling of past projects, if that would be acceptable.
Absolutely, that would be great. If you can get that to city staff, they'll get it out to us.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Commissioner Mayer?
Probably help if I mute myself. I don't think I have any questions right now.
All right. Commissioner Stonehouse?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think it's important that we all understand that from day one, from the very beginning of this project concept all the way through the public reviews and hearings, we've presented it on the persona of being two piers. And while we may be shortening up two piers, I think it's critical that we maintain two piers, one longer, one shorter, variations, but I don't think we can get away with not doing two pretty good piers. But I think it's also very critical that we keep it within the budget. And as tempting as we'd like to throw another $1 million on it and build something that's even better, I think the prudence that we have, especially coming forward into COVID and coming out of COVID and still not, I think, all that clear with what the future will be, it certainly behoves us to be a little conservative on this and to do it within our budget and do the very best we can with that budget. And again, I'd like to commend the good folks, George and his team, for what they've done and been able to hang with us and go through these stormy waters of getting it permitted and cut down and changed and emaciated and shredded and brought back again. So thank you much, guys. Thank you, Your Honor.
Commissioner Davis?
Certainly, you skipped Bonzo again, but.
Oh, I did.
That's okay.
All right, I'll come back. I'll come back to Commissioner Bonzo. I'm sorry. Wow.
I thoroughly agree with Commissioner Stonehouse about staying within the budget. I think the project will increase access to the lake shore for all of our residents and our visitors, and I think that that's important. It's difficult for me to weigh in on one versus the other because as you said, Mayor Smith, it's, without a picture, without that rendering, it's hard to say, oh, I love this one, but this one's not so good. But otherwise, let's stay within the budget as much as we can, and let's get access to the lake shore for the community.
Well said, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Bonzo, I apologize.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with Commissioners Stonehouse and Davis. I think that it's really hard to look at those financial projections that were just shared with us and not come to the conclusion that we really have to go with one of the alternatives that's been given to us that's within budget, as opposed to spending another $1 million, another 70-some thousand a year to service that debt. So no, I think that I generally agree with you, Mayor Smith, that keeping that going with an option that gives us a somewhat wider pier might be better from the standpoint of public events and making this a more versatile space. But I'm very happy with options number 1 or 2 that were presented to us in the presentation. And I guess I just had a quick question, for you, Gary. So Gary, you were saying that, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you were saying that it seems unlikely that we're going to be doing the Pier redevelopment bond in 2021 because we'd have to get, issue that by April. So would that then push out, essentially just take that timeline that's in that the presentation and push it out a year? So what's under the 2021 column would move to 22 and so on and so forth, or would it change things?
Well, actually, the way Matt could set it up, you just take out the number that's in 2021 and leave the rest the same. It'll work out basically the same way, because we would only pay interest for the first 3 years, which really he already has it teed up that way. So I think he was just trying to show if by some miracle we were able to get the bond issued this year, that there would be that $104,000 payment. But from what I can see, just take out that 2021 bond payment and everything else will stay the same.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's very helpful. I don't think I have any other questions at this time.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Hanley?
I would just like to reiterate the fact that I am good with either one or two, but I do agree that having a longer space at the end or a larger space at the end would be good in case people, I assume that when we're allowed to, people are going to want to have little weddings out there like they do on the boardwalk right now and things like that. And I think accommodating for that and making sure we plan for it now would be the better bet. And I believe that's the option that also includes, it has the one spot that's not quite finished, but we have the option of finishing it later. Or is that is it the other way around? The wider one, is that option 2?
Yeah, so this is the wider option that I'm showing right now, that it was a little bit shorter. The second option.
I don't think you're sharing your screen anymore right now, George.
I'm not. Here, I thought I was sharing my screen this whole time.
You were until just very recently.
Okay, here we go. Let's try again. So this is the option here where it's a little bit shorter, but it has the full, full width there. There is the second option where it's a little bit longer, but we're missing that. And like I said, if we could compromise between the two and remove this section just here or something too. So that's something we can, look at with staff or something after too.
Okay. Perfect. All right. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know that I even have anything else to add. I think the commission has covered it quite well. I'm pleased with schematic number 1 and schematic number 2. I'll just reiterate, I think if we can do something with schematic 1, where we make, with those sails and with a little bit of an area where people can gather, that might be nice, because I think there's going to be an appetite for that after this COVID situation. But my guess is you could probably gather pretty well even under schematic number 2. It doesn't seem that much more narrow, but maybe I'm looking at that incorrectly. Is it, you could still have?
You'd have this width right here is roughly 60 feet, right, or 60 feet right here, as opposed to 90.
Oh, so it is quite a bit
Yeah,
more narrow. All right, well then I reverse that statement. I would prefer number 1, but I would also support number 2. How about that? Depending on cost and what you guys come up with. I don't know that we gave you a real clear direction, but I think you at least know we support what you're doing. It sounds like we've been briefed about the new contractor, and we appreciate them being willing to come on board, and I think we just kind of go from here and see what the next steps are. I see our city manager here standing here with some comments. Any other city staff with anything to add before I turn it over to Mike here?
Nope, just thanks to everybody.
Thanks, John. Here's Mike.
I just got done saying they know better. But it may not look like it, but we're pretty good at reading the tea leaves, and I think we've gotten through the feedback, which is what we do all the time in these work sessions, we understand, I think, what a more acceptable direction will be, and Before we go, though, I will ask John, if you have a timeline in mind as to when this might come back to the commission. I'm thinking, I don't know, is it gonna be next month or if it is next month, it should be the first couple of weeks, but if it isn't, it should be probably April. So John, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, we could potentially bring, a construction contract back in the same fashion that we did last year, dependent upon permitting. But really the big wild card at this point, to really move forward, we have to get that USACE permit. So I think that nothing, real concrete is going to happen until we hear back from the Army Corps of Engineers. And George, if you wanted to, weigh in there, that's kind of what I'm thinking and the way that I'm kind of reading the tea leaves at this point.
Yeah, and the last indication that we got from the permit agent was around the end of March. They would be providing us the next direction or hopefully a permit, but we don't know until we get there.
So at that time, we could definitely take everything back to the commission.
So we'll look at preparing it for, hopefully the first meeting in April, if not the second. So, but I'd like, the contractor to have something, solid to go with too. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, I think that is enough on the discussion side. Certainly appreciate city staff, DEI, and our potential new consultant here. At this point, I will go ahead and open things back up for public comment. I'm not sure if we have anyone in the waiting room. We do not. Do we have any written public comment for the second comment period? We do not. So public comment is now closed, and we are adjourned at 6:00.